This is Madame Edel. Wait a minute. Stop it. No. What have we talked about? Anyway, let's talk about soirees. So firstly, we've got to ask ourselves, what is a soiree? The soirees come from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius on mobile. They were released in Opus 16 about 5 sets ago. They're a multi-element deck with a bit of an identity crisis. They'll haunt your locals forever and they'll probably never leave. And there's a dog who's an assassin? But there's some genuine good stuff in this deck. There's a clear backup curve and some high value plays in the deck. The key cards teach you all the elemental tropes of the TCG. There are some really powerful X bursts. There are cards that teach colour fixing to teach you CP management. And have I mentioned that there's a dog? There are some bad points to soirees though. They don't like having their break zone removed. Everybody knows them and they're pretty linear. They require a lot of cards on the board in order to work properly. At this point they're 5 sets old. And the dog isn't great, which is pretty much a crime at this point. Now let's take a look at a real soiree. Vesphia is a pretty good example of how soirees work. The first line of text says that if you control 2 or more soirees, you draw a card. And it says on the second line that if you control 4 or more soirees, draw another card. So what's not to like? The more soirees you have, the more cards you get when she enters the field. This is generally how most of Moors' soiree members work. They do one ability when you've got a couple of soirees on the field or so, and their ability is even better and even more beefed up when you've got even more soirees on the field. So as a player, you're incentivized to establish and keep on the board as many soirees as possible. When it comes to backups, we're mainly wanting to find Amber, as she searches for Madame Edel herself or any other of Moors' soiree members in the deck. If you haven't got her, you're generally searching for Shinju the moment you got Amber onto the field, as Shinju is our key piece that fixes CP colour. This is because she says that the cost required to cast your Moors soiree members can be paid with CP of any element, but she also lets your Moors soiree members of any element party with each other as well, because normally you can only party attack with forwards of the same element. And then we have the boss lady herself, Madame Edel. She's got a lot of text, and you can read that in your own time, but she essentially protects your soiree members that you already have on the board. But looking at the bottom text, you can see that when she enters the field, you can choose a soiree in your break zone and play it straight onto the field. It doesn't mention anything about cost, it just says play it for free. This ability allows you to get a lot of resources for very little cost, so you can imagine playing your Madame Edel and taking Lexa or Amber from your break zone. Lexa would protect Madame Edel, whereas Amber would allow you to get that search for Shinju, and you wouldn't have to pay for either of those cards in this scenario. You don't have to fill an entire soiree deck with soirees though, as there are little engines like Earthwind Cecil with multi-element cards like Warrior of Light you could use. On a more budget route, you might want to try Wind Lulu or Fire Braska from the Custom 10 starter, or if you just want some more spice in your life, you might want to go for multi-element Une or Fire Axstar for all those spicy X bursts. Despite their flaws and despite the good stuff, the main thing I love about soirees is just how cheap and affordable they are. It means that anybody starting this TCG can pick up a pretty good deck pretty cheap. We're talking pennies online, or even just finding half of this stuff in your bulk. You might not become the next world champion with soirees, but you're definitely going to be able to take the odd game against your friends and even at a locals. And for the amount of money that you pay for it, it's going to teach you so much about the game going forward that it's really worth the investment and time spent on it. With that being said, that's all I've got for you on soirees for the moment, but I hope this has given you enough insight to go and pick up some cards and get playing.